Hello and welcome, everyone. We're really glad to have you here for the next session of our Day One and Beyond series. If you missed any of the previous sessions, you can find the recordings on the Day One and Beyond page. And while you're there, please take a moment to review the other series and webinars that we have added for you. I'm Renu Bhatt, Program Lead with the Customer Enablement Team, and today I'm joined by Olivia Ferda and Uma Kumar, both are cloud engineers here at Oracle. So after you've migrated your operations to cloud, what should you do to get the most out of your cloud investment in terms of operational efficiency, security, and value for money? So let's hop over to Olivia and Uma to learn more about that. Olivia,
Thanks,
please take over.
thanks, Reno. So before we get started, one thing that I want to point out is that we do have our webinar series here for Day One and Beyond, but we also do have hands-on, cloud native, cloud security, and did you know? So please feel free to explore those series as well. All right, so hopping into what we will be focusing on today. So we'll be focusing on different workload use cases, but mainly focusing on a particular use case. Also cloud management and cost optimization, security, monitoring, automation, and disaster recovery. So all these different areas and how you can improve the impact.
Olivia, just a quick question to kind of get us started today. So, we're kind of still, some of us might be waking up on the West Coast. But the session, it's called Navigating Impact for your organization. So I know one of the things we'll be going through is use cases. I just kind of wanted to highlight that and maybe ask a question just to get people thinking about it. What are kind of the different types of use cases that you typically see, customers encounter in OCI? I know it's, very realistic that they would have some independent vendor applications, IZ applications, maybe custom applications, or maybe they're just, automating like a SaaS application. So I was wondering, what you thought about the different types of use cases you saw and kind of a typical one as an example we could go through.
Yeah, so we'll actually be focusing on that fairly soon, but there's cloud native as a potential workload. So building out containers, functions, DevOps. There's also big data, so more Hadoop, Spark. But where we'll mainly be focusing today is more on a traditional three-tier application where you have your database, compute servers, and load balancers, and how from there you can improve the impact for your application. And this kind of just builds off of earlier, once again, containers, functions, and DevOps for cloud native. You also have big data, but we'll mainly be focusing on this three-tier applications piece right here, the different components, and then also how you can improve the impact for that. Right, so here we have our example MuShop application. After you've already input the IP address, it'll look like this. But now I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into the background or the architecture that built out the MuShop application. So breaking it down right here, we have our load balancer and our public subnet to automate the distribution of traffic between our backend servers. And for your load balancer, there's different algorithms that you can leverage, whether it's going to be the default round robin, which would distribute traffic sequentially between your backend servers, least connections, so distribute it to the backend server with least number of connections, or you can do IP hash. So you have different ways of distributing your traffic to your backend servers. And then here we actually have our backend servers and our private subnets. So right here we have HTML5 running on the compute instance, which is the front end. And then we also have Go catalog is running on the compute instance here, which is for the product service catalog for our application. And we also have our REST APIs. So we're using Node.js for the session management. And we have some other tools on here as well. So we have our autonomous database, which holds all of the transactional data. A few other services I want to point out, because we'll kind of see them later on, is object storage to store our media assets. So going forward, we're going to be focusing on different ways. Once again, how we can kind of improve our application in different areas like security, cost, all of that.
So Olivia, what's the purpose of this Mu Shop application? I mean, is it something to do with a pet shop or?
Yeah, so it's just an application for different services for your animal or something like that. So it's just an example application and something that maybe you might be doing something similar in your own workload. So
For
just kind
pet
of,
food. Okay, okay. Thank you.
yep. But mainly just want to break down these different components because you will see them referenced later on as we cover these different areas. So we might discuss load balancer because that might tie into WAF or a security service or something like that, or object storage as an example. So I just kind of want to break down the application. All right, so diving in, once again, this session will be focusing on how we can improve the application deployment. So there are some different considerations that we'll explore. So setting up notifications, how do you increase monitoring for all your different resources or your environment? How do you automate, some features of your environment as well? Data recovery is also a very important thing to consider. So disaster recovery solutions, data guard, also low code development. So maybe to add new features, we'll be exploring all these different requirements, enhancement needs to improve, once again, your application deployment. All right, so focusing on one area right now, so management for cost optimization and the different resources here that can maybe improve our MuShop application. So there's several different services here under the management category. So first you have events. And so this is more around if you want to know around different events impacting your different resources. So let's take, for example, the object storage bucket in our MuShop application. If someone makes that bucket public, if someone deletes that bucket or updates it, we might want to be notified around that. So there's the event service, and it's not just object storage. You can do it for other services as well. There's also Cloud Advisor. So this will give you more recommendations around performance, availability, and cost to help optimize or improve those areas. We also have Oracle support, so kind of the point of contact for all product support trainings and needs. And then there's also the notification service, which is pretty key because it ties into some of the other services like the event service. So once again, if that bucket is deleted or updated or something like that, it would tie into the notification service to notify you, and also notifications ties into other services like monitoring or the service connector. But we'll mainly be focusing on the event service, so different events impacting your different resources. Our MuShop application, we might want to be aware of that. Also Cloud Advisor, how we can, utilize some of those recommendations to improve areas like availability, cost, all of that. And then also notifications, which ties into some of the services like the event service here. All right, so diving into the event service and kind of what this is. So there's three different core concepts here. So you have the actual event, and this is emitted anytime a resource within a compartment is created, its attributes are modified, or its state changes. So just once again, going back to the object storage example. You also have the event rule. So this is something that you define. So there's different rules that you can define. So if the bucket is deleted, if it's created, all of that, you can define those rules. And the rules will vary depending on the resource that you select when you're creating that rule. Lastly, you have an event action. So the action to take once the above event does occur. You can invoke a function, trigger a notification, or you can write to stream. And it doesn't just have to be one or the other. You can do all three if you want to. So once again, if someone deletes an object storage bucket, you can set it up to where you're notified of when that occurs. So it just kind of might be good to know for the different events impacting your different resources in your application. All right, so the event service ties in to notifications. So it also ties into monitoring, service connector, and there's different channels or protocols for being notified. You can do email, PagerDuty, Slack functions, HTTPS, you can define that. And breaking it down a little bit further, once again, you can see the services that it ties into. It's essentially how you get started is you first create a notification topic right here. So you just give it a name. And then from there, you can add your different subscribers or your subscriptions. So it can be email, functions, HTTPS, PagerDuty, or Slack. And you can also see if that subscription is active or not. And if it says pending, that might just mean that the subscriber hasn't accepted the subscription, so they won't receive any notifications, but you can manage that all there. So once you have your notification topic and you have your active subscriptions, you can then start tying it into some of these services right here. And this is good for, once again, staying up to date for anything impacting your application or your environment. Another tool that I want to cover is Cloud Advisor, so how you can optimize spending in your OCI tenancy or even just in general for your application. And how it works is it finds potential inefficiencies in your tenancy and offers guided solutions that explain how to address them. So these recommendations can help you maximize cost savings and improve the security of your environment. So you can see right here, there's these different key areas listed. So security is more of CloudGuard, which we'll be covering in a moment, but there's also areas such as cost management. So you can see all the different recommendations that you have, as well as a breakdown of the severity or critical level of the recommendation. So minor to severe, how many have been implemented, how many have been pending. So more for cost management, this might be resources that are underutilized. You also have the same for performance and high availability. So you can implement some of these recommendations. You can postpone it to a later date, or if you don't think the recommendation is important, you can always dismiss it. So there's several different actions that you can take for Cloud Advisor.
So kind of a question going off of that. What if I don't really like the timing of the recommendation it gives me? So is there a way to like customize or kind of change what the recommendation, like kind of the criteria or profile it's looking at, and then kind of targeting it at my specific workloads, depending on kind of when I want to have a certain notification or suggestion from Cloud Advisor?
Yeah, so you can do that in the settings and the global recommendations. And for each recommendation, you can pick a recommendation profile. So it's going to be aggressive, standard, or conservative. So there's several different profiles that you can change it to. You can also change the evaluation period. And I think by default, it's 7 days, but you can change that to be up to 90 days or as soon as a day or something like that. So you can certainly make those customizations. You can even create overrides for your compartments and your tags for those recommendation profiles.
Awesome.
Right. So diving into security and how you can improve the impact there for your application. And for example, the MuShop application. So for security, there's several different key tools here, and we'll be mainly focusing on WAF or Web Application Firewall, CloudGuard, but there's also some other tools to be aware of, such as security zones and the Bastion service. So we'll mainly, once again, be focusing on these two areas right here. So CloudGuard, we kind of saw this a little bit in Cloud Advisor. You'll see the overview of the security recommendations, but to actually get more insights into those recommendations, you would click into the CloudGuard console area, and it'll provide different security recommendations to help improve your security posture. You also have a web application firewall to help you protect your applications or MuShop application from malicious and unwanted internet traffic. And then you also have security zones. So the thing about CloudGuard is this is going to be more reactive, whereas with security zones, this is going to be more preventative. You also have the Bastion service, so kind of providing secure access to your private host.
So kind of question about this. I know you're about to deep dive more into WAF and CloudGuard, but so maybe at the end after you go through it, just want to kind of tie it back to MuShop and potentially see like how can we apply these two services to an application, like a simple 3-tier application, or one of the other use cases that you mentioned in the beginning of the session, like how can we basically tie in these security services to something like that?
Yeah, so with WAF or Web Application Firewall, you can attach that to an enforcement point. So with MuShop, that can be our load balancer that we saw in the architecture diagram to help protect from any malicious traffic. And then with CloudGuard, this will provide general security recommendations. So going back to the object storage example, so if a bucket is made public or something like that, CloudGuard will detect that problem. So if someone in our MuShop application makes that bucket public, CloudGuard will, flag that problem. So then you can take action upon that. And just going back to security zones. So with security zones, this is going to be more preventative. So if you have a security zone policy that forbids public buckets from being created, it'll actually prevent that from happening in the first place. So that's another tool that maybe you can leverage. But with CloudGuard, it's going to be a little bit more reactive. And we'll kind of dive a little bit into that right now. So WAF is going to be a regional based and edge enforcement service that once again is attached to enforcement points. This can be the load balancer in general or a MuShop application, or it can be a web application domain name. And the main goal of WAF is going to be to protect your applications from malicious and unwanted internet traffic. So WAF can protect any internet-facing endpoint, giving you consistent rule enforcement across your application. And the service is also going to provide you with the ability to create and manage rules for internet threats. So this can be cross-site scripting, SQL injection, DDoS, or others. So it would be important to have in place. And this is just a quick graphic to show some of the different layers in the WAF service to either deny or allow access. And it kind of acts as a reverse proxy that will inspect all traffic flows or requests prior to them arriving at the origin web application. And it will also inspect any request going from the web application server to the end user. So this will allow you to control data leakage from your application servers, as well as protect your servers from outside threats. So diving more into CloudGuards, this is going to be an OCI service that helps monitor, identify, achieve, and maintain a strong security posture on Oracle Cloud. And you can use this service to examine your OCI resources for security weaknesses. And how this works is you would designate your compartments or your logical grouping of resources as a target that you want to monitor. So this can be your root compartment and all your subcompartments, or you can do a specific subcompartment or however you want to break that down. And then upon detection, CloudGuard can suggest, assist, or take corrective actions based on your configuration. All right, so a few key terms to be aware of when you're working with CloudGuard. So once again, you have your target, and this is just the compartment to monitor the activity for any problems. So you can make this your root compartment, subcompartments, however you want to go about that. You also have detector recipes that you can leverage to detect the different problems. So there's going to be the Oracle managed ones, but you can clone the Oracle managed detector recipes to make your own custom recipes if you want to. And this might be good if you have a production environment with more stringent detector rules and maybe dev with less severity or something like that. So you can make some customizations. And then you also have the actual problems, and different problems are going to have varying severity levels associated with them. And then lastly, you have responders, or how to respond to some of the problems. So depending on the problem, sometimes it might be manual action, but some are going to have automated responses, which will be there for certain problems that are flagged that you can go in and remediate without having to go into the actual service. So kind of depend on the problem. Right, so let's say in our MuShop application, someone goes in and makes that object storage bucket visibility public. From there, this sets off the rule that the bucket is public. And we can see right here, this is a severity level critical problem. And from there, you would have two different routes for solving. So you have the more automated option, which would use a mixture of events, functions, and notifications to solve the problem. And this kind of varies, once again, on the problem. Or you can take a more manual route. You can maybe have a CloudGuard operator go in and manually take action on that. You can also dismiss certain problems as well. And you should see a history of how many times this problem has occurred and if there was any remediation action taken. So you can should be able to see that in the console as well for that problem. But just kind of a high level overview and tying it back into our MuShop application with the example here. Right, so now I will pass over to Uma to take us through automation and a few other key areas for navigating impact.
Oops, sorry, I was on mute button. All right, awesome. Thanks, Olivia. Let me just go ahead and share my screen with you guys. All right. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. And also, yeah, let us know if you have any questions that have come up. You can drop them in the Q&A and we can answer them live here. But now for the second part of the session, I'll be going through things like automation, disaster recovery, monitoring. So first, let's look a little bit at full automation as an option, just as you are, again, kind of building out your different workloads and applications on OCI. So we have several different automation tools that we can pull from. One on the left-hand side is resource managers. That's going to actually automate the deployment of your actual infrastructure for your application. I'll be spending quite a bit of time on that and also just talking about the importance of infrastructure as code because it works off of that IAC model. We also have digital assistant, which is to the left of it. So that is going to help you kind of add in digital assistants and chatbots into your application, utilizing AI and machine learning and natural language processing. Our Visual Builder Studio helps you build responsive web applications and native mobile apps. Great to kind of extend, again, some Oracle SaaS functionality or add on to your applications already. And it is working off of kind of a low code, no code environment. So there's a really user-friendly, GUI where you can kind of drag and drop things. It's a bit more intuitive rather than just having to code out specific functionality into your application. And then lastly, on the right hand, all the way on the left-hand side, we have Apex or Application Express. So that is also going to be kind of a no code / low code application development environment, but it's really focused on data-driven applications. So it's working off the engine of your database. You can install it on Oracle database and basically be able to create different productivity apps using dashboards. Can work great for spreadsheet replacement. And really great in sort of a collaborative team environment as well. So today I will mainly be focusing on Resource Manager first, and then we'll take a look at Apex pretty quickly after that. But just kind of want to give you ideas of basically how you can bring automation into OCI when you have these several different workloads. So obviously in the event of MuShop, you saw we had a pretty simple architecture there. A VCN, a few different subnets, and then database, some compute instances, things like that. So those are things that would be very, simple, or I guess not simple, but very attainable to deploy via an infrastructure as code model. And then you could repeat those deployments because you're kind of having already your infrastructure kind of documented before it's even deployed. So I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure as code first and kind of just get into what it is and why it's important, and then talk about, Oracle's basically solution for Terraform or that infrastructure as code tool. So infrastructure as code, if you're unfamiliar with it, the definition is, the managing and provisioning of infrastructure through code instead of through manual processes. So when you're using IAC or infrastructure as code, you have configuration files that are going to be created that will contain all of your infrastructure specifications. So it's going to make it a lot easier to kind of edit and distribute these configurations. So the specific infrastructure as code, there's several different types. Today, we'll mainly be focusing on Terraform since that is what kind of Resource Manager is made or built from. So Terraform allows you to define and establish standards in Terraform. So essentially you're scripting out and putting exactly in place what you want to see as your end state or result state. And what's great about it is that you can repeat deployments however many times you want once you've actually, specified your infrastructure and your configuration. And so Terraform itself, if you're unfamiliar with it, it is a scripting language that HashiCorp created. So it's written in HashiCorp config language or ACL or HCL, and it very closely resembles JSON in that you are simply just declaring and describing the exact state of your environment, and then it's going to execute it for you. So it takes care of a lot of the behind the scenes and grunt work for deployment, kind of automating that aspect for you. So it is a declarative language that in that way. So you're just kind of declaring what you want to see, and then the software itself is going to take care of how you get there. Whereas with a tool like Ansible, which is also another infrastructure as code tool, it's more of a procedural or imperative language. So you're actually kind of writing out tasks and playbooks to get kind of step by step how you want to go from your starting point to your ending point. So Terraform, what's great about it is you can use it with multiple cloud vendors. You don't have to kind of relearn it for each vendor. You just specify essentially your provider within your Terraform configuration. So it's really important that you are kind of defining what you want the resulting infrastructure to look like. So again, I mentioned it already has the intelligence in there built in to produce you an end state. And because you're defining everything up front, you are documenting everything before it's getting deployed. So the ultimate best practice with infrastructure as code is to always make changes through infrastructure as code. So you never want to deploy your infrastructure with a tool like Terraform and then go on and make like manual changes. So if you're following best practice, your architecture definition will always be updated and documented before it's actually being applied. You can also leverage reusable modules and proven configuration to help you accelerate the delivery of complete application architectures. And because the configuration is validated and tested, it can be deployed by pretty much anyone, even an automated bot, with consistent results every single time. So just want to kind of go into how does Resource Manager work in terms of infrastructure provisioning. So Resource Manager is our wrapper tool for Terraform. So instead of going through the open source provider, you can still upload your same configuration files directly into the console and then still run those different Terraform jobs to plan, apply, or even destroy your infrastructure. So there's several different ways to kind of get started in Resource Manager. I'll just take you through the basic flow here. So the first step is going to be obviously authoring your Terraform configuration files, which will describe your infrastructure. There's several different ways you can kind of create a stack, or that's going to be kind of the entire collection of resources that you want to deploy. So you can start with just, bringing in your own template definition. You can also start with sample templates that we have on the console, or you can also import existing infrastructure in a single click. So that's if, maybe you have already started deploying manually in OCI through the command line or just by clicking in our graphical, web console, but you want to move or transition to keeping everything through Resource Manager and Terraform just so that you can keep track of the state of all your resources, know exactly what is being deployed. Again, repeat deployments. If you want that efficiency and kind of safety net as well that infrastructure as code provides, you can actually capture all your resources that you've already manually deployed. By using the resource discovery feature when you're creating a stack in Resource Manager. So Resource Discovery is going to look through a particular compartment and region that you specify, and it's going to capture everything that's already been created there, and it will create a stack for you and also give you the resulting configuration files. So that's kind of a way to translate if you don't use Terraform to getting that Terraform script there. So those are just the different ways basically to create that stack. Once you create a stack, that's when you can run a plan job. So when you run a plan job against the stack, then the plan job is going to parse your configuration and will create an execution plan for you, but it won't take any action on the stack. So once it's completed, you can actually look at the execution plan in the job log entries portion, and it'll just show you, all the expected operations and in its intended sequences. So you can kind of just confirm that, okay, everything is being created in the order it needs to be created in. That looks good. Once you're satisfied with that execution plan, now you can actually do the work of provisioning the stack with the resources that you've defined. So the apply job will then take the execution plan and apply it to the stack, the result being a fully provisioned stack. I do want to mention that there's a lot of important information about the state of your resources configuration, and it's maintained in a state file, which is a JSON file. So again, if you are just using Terraform as an open source tool or with the OCI provider in there, you have to keep track of your state file. You want to make sure it doesn't get corrupted or deleted or anything like that, because it's essentially going to be mapping your stack's resources to your configuration, as well as maintaining essential configuration information like resource dependencies. So it's really important to keep track of, especially when you have multiple people running multiple Terraform jobs. It can get kind of messy to have, the most updated or most recent Terraform state file. So the great thing about Resource Manager is it actually will maintain and generate and update those state files automatically for you every time you run a apply or a destroy job.
So let's say that instead of manually building out the MuShop application, I create a stack, I use Resource Manager to deploy the MuShop application, and we've made a few changes since. Is there a way to roll back to a previous state or version of our application?
Yeah, so you're able to kind of roll back to that previous apply job if there are changes that have been made. And another cool tool about Resource Manager is you can actually detect any of the drift from your resources. So from the state file or from your last apply job to the current state of resources by running a drift detection report. So that's another kind of work request you can do in Resource Manager, and it will actually go through all your resources. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's automatically changing to the other slide. But essentially it's going to go through all of your resources, and it's going to check all of the properties for it, check the expected properties from, your configuration versus what the actual properties are in OCI, and it will highlight if there's been any modifications or deletions, or it'll let you know if everything is in sync and kind of up to date and matching your configuration. One other thing too that Resource Manager does that's cool is it also supports state locking. So it allows only one job at a time to run on a given stack. So that again is just kind of making sure that there's no errors or kind of confusion between if you have several team members, working on the same stack. And it is because it is cloud native with OCI, it's integrated with all of our OCI services, including identity and access management. So you can actually define granular permissions for Resource Manager to your different groups and users. All right. So now I'll talk a little bit about Oracle Apex. So the Oracle Apex service serves a wide range of use cases, I think I mentioned briefly. So you can build applications that will really present a unified view of your data in things like interactive reports, data visualizations, dashboards. So it allows you again to easily create applications suitable for specific LOB users, departments, or maybe an entire organization. A great use case for this is replacing error-prone spreadsheets with fully populated tables in Oracle database, and then corresponding it to an Apex application, providing you kind of a single source of truth. So it is working, again, directly on that database. You can create bespoke applications for your diverse business scenarios and industries, and quickly iterate, test, and review applications with end users. So it really just helps you rapidly build applications for like internal or external users, like partners or customers. You can provide custom REST endpoints for sharing application data. So this is kind of the modernization of Oracle Forms applications as well. We personally use it in our team a lot. We are, Customer Connect. We also do several different types of customer enablement. So internally at Oracle, this is a tool we use to kind of keep track of all the different sessions we do, maybe how many attendees we had, just keeping track of important metrics, as well as having like a built-in team calendar. So we know kind of what everyone is doing at at any kind of current point in time and which customers they're working for. So it's a really great, again, kind of way to keep track of productivity, and very easy to kind of, if there's changes we need or more requirements we start having, we can kind of change that with a lot of flexibility and ease. So Apex is a very handy tool. All right. If there's no questions, I'm now going to shift from automation more to the monitoring side of things. So there's a few different tools that I'll highlight for monitoring. We'll go through application performance monitoring, APM, and then also our logging service. We're not talking about OCI monitoring in this session, but that is also another, our cloud native monitoring solution where you can build different monitoring queries. You can look at different namespaces and metrics, and also kind of integrate with the notification service to have alarms for certain metrics and workloads. Today, we'll just be focusing on APM and logging. So OCI Application Performance Monitoring Service, it's going to provide you with deep visibility into the performance of applications and also provides the ability to diagnose issues quickly in order to deliver a consistent level of service. So this includes monitoring of multiple components and application logic spread across clients, third-party services, and back-end computing tiers, whether that be on-premise or on the cloud. And then we have our logging service. This is kind of our centralized platform for all different types of logs. We have our audit logs, our cloud native service logs, and you can also ingest custom or on-premise logs as well. You can search through the logs, enable different logging groups to kind of restrict access of what people are able to see. So we'll also dive deeper into that as well. But I want to talk a little bit more about APM first. So APM, like I mentioned, providing you deep visibility into the end user experience. So it automatically monitors real user activity and interaction with your most important applications, including performance measurements and user satisfaction scores like AppDex. So the core of the service is an implementation of this distributed tracing system. So that's supporting open tracing enabled microservices and auto instrumentation of legacy applications. So it provides you with an integrated end-to-end transaction tracing across new and old components. You can also proactively initiate synthetic transactions where you have predefined critical application flows that are executed from vantage points across the world. So you can assess kind of exactly what kind of experience users from different parts of the world will have on your application. So in this way, you can ensure, the performance and the functionality of your most critical application flows. And since APM service is integrated with, again, all of our other services, you can extend the analysis to other tiers of our observability and management service. Again, of the stack in context drill downs, you can push that to logging analytics, database management, and other kind of O&M services. Okay, so I'll also talk briefly about the logging service. So when you are running workloads in the cloud, you have several different logs generated, again, from every point in the stack, your infrastructure, database, audit application, on-premise. So utilizing this logging service will offer you kind of a single stack view experience to bring kind of all of these logs in one place. It is natively integrated with your OCI resources for a seamless one-click experience to turn on these logs. And it gives you the ability to manage and secure your logs and ensure that only authorized users have access to sensitive data. So that's utilizing log groups, like I mentioned before. So there's 3 different types of logs, basically, that you can have in the logging service. The first one is your audit logs. So this is going to record all the logs related to events emitted by the audit service. So these are logs that are going to be available from the logging audit page. They're also searchable on the search page alongside the rest of your logs. Essentially, audit logs are going to record every sort of kind of API call that's made in your tenancy. So whether that be a click in the console or a command from the command line, or a script from SDK or something like that, all of those things are going to be recorded in your audit log. And you can utilize things like the service connector or even the event service that Olivia mentioned before to kind of search through these logs and then perform specific actions. We also have service logs. So these are going to be emitted by OCI native services like API gateway, events, functions, load balancer, object storage, and your vCN flow logs. So each of these supported services will have predefined logging categories that you can either choose to enable or disable on your respective resources. And then lastly, we have our custom logs. So those are logs that contain diagnostic information from custom applications, maybe other cloud providers, or even an on-premise environment. So custom logs can be ingested through the API, or you can also configure the unified monitoring agent. So you can configure like an OCI instance or resource to directly upload custom logs through the unified monitoring agent, and they are supported in both virtual machine and bare metal scenarios.
Regarding the service logs, let's say in our MuShop application for our load balancer, let's say one of the backend service is down or there's an error with that service. Is that something that the service logs can track, and can we be notified about that?
Yeah, so again, it's going to depend what type of service logs or what type of categories you have, depending on the different types of service. For load balancing specifically, there's two categories. We have our access logs and our error logs. So definitely if there is some sort of issue or there's a bad connection happening, one of the servers is down, you get like a 400 response or something, you would 100% see that show up in the error log, and you'll be able to kind of expand that. Look at the metadata for that as well. And you can also, again, filter by time again, or by kind of specific error that you're wanting to search on. So yeah, you can definitely view errors for an application like MuShop using a service log. But overall, just kind of to tie things together, when you have all your logs in one view, you're kind of able to easily view and correlate logs across your entire stack into that clean layer cake experience. And it allows you to make every log line actionable in your real time. Again, you can integrate this with Service Connector, like I mentioned. With this integration, you can push your logs to third-party destinations or take actions on them with Service Connector. So again, like searching through them and then creating an event or a task from one of them, that's all possible. All right, if there's no questions, I'll go on to the last portion of today, which is our disaster recovery. So we have just some features up here that all have to do with disaster recovery. We have our DR concept. So again, things like your RTO and RPO will kind of go through what those metrics are, what they mean, and how it's kind of important to be familiar with them as you build out a DR strategy. We also have DataGuard, which is Oracle's kind of software to be able to fail over seamlessly from a primary database to a standby database. There's different options of DataGuard. We have normal DataGuard and also active DataGuard, which gives you more of an active-active configuration. Obviously, when we think of disaster recovery, being able to take backups are very important. So being aware of the different backup options, automated backups, and kind of where they are kept, as well as just understanding different backup policies for things like your block volumes and storage volumes. Those are all going to be important. And obviously we have our high availability storage options. So just being aware of the different storage options out there, like having a local NVMe versus a block volume versus file storage, and kind of how that would compute into planning a DR strategy as well. Today, I'm mainly just going to be focusing on the DR concepts. We'll talk a little bit about DataGuard and our MAA, or maximum availability architecture framework. So let's just jump right in. So just kind of going through the basics of DR, most of businesses today, they are inclined to deploy a disaster recovery plan to ensure a certain level of business continuity. And that's merely going to depend on how critical the application is to the business. So DR plans are usually in place to avoid a single point of failure and also prevent data loss, in which it's going to, reduce downtime cost and revenue impact for a planned or unplanned outage. So sometimes enterprises are mandated to enable data protection for compliance and regulatory purposes. So no matter kind of what the reason is, having a good DR plan in place and designed in such a way is really important to kind of meet your business continuity requirements. And two metrics that are very important to that DR plan are going to be your RTO and your RPO. So your RTO, or recovery time objective, is going to be the target time that is required to restore your application functionality. after a disaster happens. So the goal is to measure how quickly you must recover from a disaster. So typically, the more critical the applications, the lower the RTO, and typically the higher the cost of that option. Now, RPO, or recovery point objective, is the acceptable time frame of lost data that your applications can tolerate. So it's going to be about how much data your applications can afford to lose in a disaster scenario. So RTO is the required time taken for an application to recover from failure or fail over and then become fully available to process new user requests after a disaster. And RPO is the amount of data loss that a business can tolerate in the case of a disaster. So lower the RTO, higher availability of the application, higher cost of DR solution, lower the RPO, lower amount of data loss, and higher cost of DR solution. And generally speaking, we will have 3 different DR options that are basically being determined by these RTO and RPO requirements. So for businesses that can tolerate up to 24 hours of downtime and data loss, then a simple backup and restore DR plan can be in place. And backup and restore is just when a point-in-time backup is used to restore an application in place. Now, let's say you have an RPO up to 12 hours and an RTO of 4 hours downtime. So that's when a cold standby would be sufficient or recommended. And with a cold standby DR solution, that's when the same point-in-time backup is used as a basis to programmatically reinstantiate the application in the DR site. So again, maybe you're replicating data with just minimum services running in OCI, basically. And then let's say you have an RTO of less than 2 hours and an RPO of less than 15 minutes. Then you want to have a more stringent DR plan. So that's going to be the warm standby option. So with warm standby DR solution, there's going to be a 1-to-1 or a scaled down DR environment that is replicated and continuously refreshed and kind of ready to take over in the event of a disaster. So again, that's going to be, you're replicating your data and your services into OCI and they're kind of ready to take over. And that's going to be the highest cost. And then just to kind of refresh your guys' mind on, how kind of OCI is structured. As of June 2024, we do have 72 regions. So we have some public regions, dedicated regions, alloy, multi-cloud, secret regions, government regions. So you can see kind of a map here, world map showing the different regions. So again, when you are creating your DR strategy, it's really important to kind of have that in place. And you can actually see there is now a little graphic here for the disaster recovery within the border or within other commercial regions. So taking advantage of the different regions when you are creating your disaster recovery solution is going to be very important. Let's say you can only afford, or your application is only really servicing one area. Maybe you just want to keep it to a singular region. So it's important to take note that within each region, we do have 1, 2, 3 separate availability domains. Those are going to be kind of your physical data centers, right? So you can choose to, have high availability or a disaster recovery plan taking place in those different ADs. If you are also in a region, some regions do just have one AD, but within each AD, we do have 3 different vault domains, and those are going to be your groupings of hardware. So there's kind of different levels of granularity that you could go, whether you're looking overall at a major disaster or just wanting more high availability within your application. It's just kind of good to be aware of the different layers and like levels of availability you can take advantage of when you are, discussing DR. Any questions over what I just went through? All right. So now I want to talk a little bit about the maximum availability architecture, or MAA. And I apologize if I accidentally refer to it as MMA. I'm not really used to saying the other acronym. But Oracle Maximum Availability Architecture, or MMA, is going to be Oracle's best practices blueprint based on proven Oracle high availability technologies. end-to-end validation, expert recommendations, and customer experiences. So the key goal of MAA is to achieve optimal high availability, data protection, disaster recovery for our different Oracle customers at the lowest cost and complexity. So MMA will consist of reference architectures of various buckets of HA service level agreements, configuration practices, and HA lifecycle operational best practices that are going to be applicable for things like non-engineered systems, engineered systems, non-cloud, and cloud deployments. So the availability of data and applications is an important element, right, of every IT strategy. And at Oracle, we have decades of enterprise experience to kind of develop this all-encompassing frameworks that we call Oracle MMA. So MMA starts at the top of this diagram with customer insights and expert recommendations. So these have been kind of collected from a huge pool of customers and community of database architects, software engineers, and database strategists. So over the years, this kind of helped the MMA development team to develop a deep and complete understanding of various kinds of events that can affect availability. Through this, they developed an array of availability reference architecture as shown on the left-hand side. So these reference architectures will acknowledge that not all data or applications require the same protection. And there is a real trade-off in terms of cost and effort that should be considered. So whatever your availability goals may be for a database or related applications, Oracle does have the product functionality and guidance to ensure you can make the right decision with full knowledge of the trade-offs in terms of downtime, potential data loss, and cost. So these reference architectures use a wide array of our high availability features, configurations, and operational best practices, which can be seen on the right-hand side here. So they help our customers primarily achieve 4 different goals. We have data protection, active replication, scale out, and continuous availability. With continuous availability, that's going to allow transparent failover of services across sites distributed locally or remote. With data protection, that's going to be reducing data loss through flashback and absolute data protection through our zero data loss recovery appliance. Active replication, that allows customers to connect their applications to replicated sites in an active HA solution through something like Active Data Guard or Golden Gate. And then lastly, we have scale out. So that's going to allow customers the ability to scale compute nodes linearly through rack, ASM, or sharding. So the above features and solutions will allow customers to mitigate not only planned events such as software upgrades, data schema changes, and patching, but also unplanned events like hardware failures and software crashes due to bugs. Finally, we have our various deployment choices seen at the bottom on which you can deploy these HA solutions. So engineered systems, hardware and software optimized, that's going to be kind of the best MAA platform, database platform. There's differentiated features, less brownouts and blackouts. We also have cloud, so that's going to be our database cloud service, Exadata cloud service, autonomous database. That's going to incorporate, our different lifecycle operations. And then we have, different insights, recommendations, reference architectures, features. They kind of combine to form this holistic blueprint or framework, allowing you to successfully achieve whatever your high availability goals are. And then way on the left-hand side, we have our different kind of levels of these blueprints, like bronze, gold, silver, platinum, consisting of kind of all the HA features that you want to use optimally, depending on kind of what you want to protect against. All right, so 5-minute time check. I think I just have one more slide to go through. So the last thing I'll talk about in terms of disaster recovery is Active Data Guard. So Active Data Guard is going to ensure high availability data protection and disaster recovery for enterprise data, so you can survive disasters and data corruption while creating, maintaining, and managing one or more synchronized standby databases. So you can choose to have DR to multiple standby databases, so it can manage one or more synchronized copies of a live database, providing zero data loss in the case of an unexpected outage of the primary database. Another feature of Active Data Guard is in-memory database replication. So that's going to be the in-memory redo replication. It's going to ensure you isolation from underlying corruption like disk corruption. It also includes automatic comprehensive validation of your replicated data blocks. There's also flexible protection modes. So there's 3 different protection modes that allow the data replication flexibility to balance data loss protection and performance. We have real-time query and DML offload on Oracle Active Data Guard. So that's going to be basically using the standby database for queries, reports, and occasional updates without impacting the primary database. And then as far as data protection goes, we have fast start failover that allows the data guard broker to automatically fail over to a standby database without the need of any human intervention. There's automatic block repair, provides you automatic and user transparent recovery of a corrupted database from the standby. And then FarSync achieves 0 data loss across any distance in the event of a site failure with no network latency. So that's just kind of an option. We have our regular data guard and active data guard. Obviously, with active data guard, you get a lot more features, some of which that I just went through. But essentially, it's giving you more of that active standby rather than a passive standby configuration. All right, and it looks like we're right about time. So I just want to lastly go through a few key takeaways from today's sessions, things to remember. So we talked about using native tools to improve your security posture. We also discussed leveraging automation to increase reliability and efficiency, how we can use monitoring tools to kind of proactively manage our applications, and then also discussing disaster recovery to meet RPO and RTO. So starting, kind of just tying it back to the MuShop application, you saw what was deployed from it was a pretty simple architecture, and we kind of just wanted to show how are the ways you can enhance, your application or your workload to bring the biggest impact made on using OCI, because OCI obviously, it's an expensive thing to bring your applications to the cloud. So why not take advantage of kind of all the options you have? So hopefully this gave you guys kind of a better understanding of how you can enhance your applications through, requirements, as well for things like automation, DR, monitoring, etc. And then we also have a list of links for you guys to learn more if you want to extend your learning. And then I will pass it back to Renu.
Thank you, Uma and Olivia, for another great session. And thanks for sharing all those tips and tricks. I'm sure everyone will find those useful. Our next session is on June 18th, and the topic will be understanding multi-cloud and hybrid cloud deployments. That session will help you understand how you can leverage Oracle Cloud Solutions for both hybrid and multi-cloud environments. We'll be covering major considerations, use cases, benefits, and Oracle solutions for each type of deployment. We'll also talk about how our customers are using the multi-cloud architectures and a wide range of hybrid cloud strategies to achieve cost savings, performance enhancements, infrastructure modernization, and faster time to insights. So if you're interested to learn, please do not forget to register for the session. You can find the details on our Devon and Beyond page. I recommend that you bookmark the Devon and Beyond page and look frequently for new sessions on trending topics. With that, thanks again for joining us. See you all next time. Have a great day, everyone.